Welcome back. Now this one's a little bit different. If you've been here long enough, you'll know this is what we're gonna christen basis picks, and we're gonna go through the Matchroom card, which is gonna be headlined by Daniel Jacobs. I'm not sure which one he prefers at the moment, against John Ryder at Alexandra Palace up in, what is it, northwest London. Now I'm actually going to be in attendance, so I will hopefully be getting some footage while I'm up there, and I will be splicing some of that into the next video, just to sort of show kind of how the fight and that was taking place. But I thought I'd go through the card, maybe do a little grading of the card as well. That might be interesting. I haven't done that before, but I want to give my predictions. Now I only ever take predictions super serious on like the big events, so I very rarely get those ones wrong. Fights where I don't particularly care too much about, I can quite easily like skip over analysis and use a lot of conjecture that way. But for this one, I was only going to really talk about a couple fights, to be honest, but I figured let me just go through the entire card and yeah, sort of give my take on each fight. So this card starts with Shiloh Defreitas versus Alexey Tukhtarov. Now I've never heard of Tukhtarov, so I'm assuming this is supposed to be some kind of introduction fight for Shiloh. So okay, cool. We'll just give that to him by default. I'm sure it will have to take like a massive bad night at the office for him to lose this fight. Never seen him, so I'm not even going to pretend like I know anything about him. But hopefully he's the goods. I know he's from London. That's about all I know. Next we've got Cyrus Pattinson against Evgeni Vazem, sorry. Now Pattinson's actually he's pretty handy. I know he was supposed to be fighting at the end of last year, I think in December, but his opponent caught COVID, so he got moved off of that card. Obviously there was nothing happening in January, so I guess he's had to take over for like the last 6-7 weeks in hopes of a new fight, but that's all good. He's kind of got what he wants now, and I'm expecting that to be sort of another W on the record, some, you know, sort of another a box ticked, you know, continuing his sort of evolution up the domestic scene, potentially to get to the European scene in a couple years time. So we'll see where we get to with that. Next fight just before the main broadcast starts is Hopey Price against Ricardo Roman. Hopey Price is a very special talent, so I have little concerns that he doesn't get through this fight. I'm not gonna say like comfortably, but well enough. Like, yeah, there might be a couple moments he's got to battle through something or other, but generally speaking, I see Hopey doing the business on that, because he is the goods, as some people say. Alright, so now we get to the main broadcast. This is where it gets a bit interesting. So Austin Williams against Javier Maciel. Now I know this was a change of opponent because his last opponent, I believe, caught COVID or got injured just before the fight started. I mean before the fight was due to take place. So Austin's got another opponent. Now I still believe that somewhere in the back of Eddie's mind, he's building Austin Williams against Anthony Fowler. So I can't really see this change of opponent. While it might, you know, still give him a good couple of rounds and be sort of solid in that respect, I don't see it being someone to overly test him, purely because he's got big money fights in his future. I'm glad he kind of got over the poor mental health issues he was having back in sort of towards the end of 2020. and throughout 2021, you know, he was there releasing diss records to Eddie Hearn and all sorts of other madness, and I don't know what he was going through, so I won't comment. But it's good that he's come out on the other side now, and yeah, I expect that to be another win for Austin, and I'm expecting him to get the knockout, because it all builds towards the future narrative. Okay, so next we got Catford's own Ellie Scotney against Jorgelina Guanini. Now, for those of you who may not know who Guanini is, she faced Rachel Ball about a year and a couple months ago. I think it was at one of the fight camps that she fought Rachel Ball. Now she came up from, I believe it was flyweight, and took on Rachel Ball at super bantamweight, I believe. Took Rachel Ball the distance, didn't win the fight, but she put up a very good effort, to be honest. Like, she's a very sort of tiny girl, but she's very nimble, agile. She can move, especially against like bigger targets. She's quite good at pot shotting, moving, and she's got great head movement as well. She slipped a lot of Rachel's shots, even though Rachel got it on the cards a bit wider than I believe she should have. But she's also like former world champion as well, Guanini. So she's definitely got pedigree, and the elusiveness might put a few more wrinkles to Ellie Scotney's bow. Like, we all know Ellie's got tremendous movement and boxing skill. At the moment, self-proclaimed, she is a bit feather-fisted, so she's not stopping people. And I don't think this is going to be a stoppage either. I think this is going to be another decision victory, because Guanini, for nothing else, knows how to protect herself and knows how to move about and make things awkward. So Ellie ultimately has to find ways to block the exits, not go head hunting with her shots. I feel like if she goes to aim a lot more of her shots towards the chest and the stomach, she's more likely to get success against Guanini. Because if she starts sort of dipping down and trying to, you know, roll under shots and roll under hands, then she's putting her face right in line for a shot if you're trying to aim at her chest. So that's a little bit of advice I'd give Ellie with regards to this fight. But ultimately, I believe that's a fairly comfortable win for Ellie. Is this an 8-rounder or a 10-rounder? I believe it's 8 rounds. If it is, I'm going to give it 6-2 Scotney. Somewhere around there. We'll see if I'm right. But yeah, big up my my Catford compatriot, even though I'm sort of Catford adjacent, but it is what it is. Right, next fight moving on is Felix Cash against Magomed Madiev. Now, I've seen a little bit of Madiev, not a lot. I think I've seen maybe 5 or 6 rounds from 2 previous fights. Felix has been out of the ring for the best part of a year now. Had some, you know, sort of horrendous family issues back in 2021. So obviously I'm glad he's on the other side of that, and many condolences to any sort of loved ones that didn't make it through that year. I know about that all too well. So yeah, but he's coming back. I don't know how much he has been training in that time though, so that's the one query I have. But with regards to this, I mean, if Felix is on top of his form, doesn't exhibit much ring rust, he can definitely use his size advantage to outwork and I guess outgun Magomed. He's fairly good, but he's got enough sort of power to be able to be competitive, but he's got great movement from what I've seen. A very slick amateur pedigree as well. He knows how to set shots up, how to slip shots in between other shots. So he's pretty good at basically counter punching as well, and sort of keeping his head off the line and stopping from, and not stopping himself from being a stationary target. So Cash has got a lot to do in this fight, if I'm being real with you, and I hope his head is 100% clear. I also believe, like most others who have been, some will say it for propaganda reasons, but I actually do believe that Cash is currently the best 160 pounder we've got in the country. Chris Eubank Jr. would probably disagree, but again, based on what I saw in the Williams fight, I don't know. Now, yeah, the one thing you can maybe level against Cash is he's fought some okay opponents, but he's never really fought anyone, you know, anyone really up there. So I don't know. If that fight was to happen, I would pick Cash to beat to beat Eubank Jr. Size, fundamentals, punching power. You know, he's with that, you know, the whole Sims lot. I just feel like that would not be a great matchup for Chris, but let's like save that for another time. We'll talk about that when we actually get there. Right, and it looks like the chief support, okay, it's definitely not a co-main, but is Johnny Fisher against Gabriel Enguema. Now, I get it why he's the co-main or the chief support. He sold over 2,000 of the tickets. There's like it's supposed to be about 7,000 people in attendance. If you put him on any earlier, then there's a high probability that a lot of the crowd could end up leaving before the main fight. Just like what happened with Chantel Cameron and Mary McGee at the O2, when Fisher fought third from last, and a whole swathe of his audience left when he finished fighting. Some stayed to watch Alan Babbage against Eric Molina, but by the time that fight was over, like the O2 was nigh on empty, which I thought was really disrespectful to the women at the time. But ultimately, I get it, like you came to see one person, that one person fought. So this time Eddie's being smarter and he's moving him to the chief support. Personally, and I said this is what should have happened with the other fight at the O2 that he was on. Sorry for the stumbling. I would have made his fight the fight after the main event. Like sometimes they do that. You'll get a fight that comes on after the main event, or you know, maybe after sort of the main part of the broadcast, but then you get sort of the bonus broadcast after. I would have put it there simply because his crowd were engaged all night, and the women would have at least had a decent crowd to perform to. And then he comes on afterwards. Even if you want to say, oh well, they're the main event, but he's now sort of like the after, like the dessert or something to the show, something like that. I could even potentially see that being something they do moving forward. However, luckily, because this is Daniel Jacobs, who is well respected and well known in the boxing world over here, and sort of John Ryder is, you know, he's repping the city, so people are going to show up for John as well. So I feel like that should be a good little turnout. But back to the Fisher fight. I haven't seen anything of Enguema, if I'm being totally honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie, don't know anything about him. Apparently he's gone rounds with decent challenges before, so if that's the case, he should pose a little bit of a challenge for Johnny. But I do expect there to be, is this a 6-rounder? If it's a 6-rounder, he might see the final bell. If it's an 8-rounder, I have a feeling he may end up getting stopped around about the 5th to between the 5th and the 6th. Maybe a corner stoppage, or just a flurry, maybe down one too many times on the canvas. But yeah, I'm going for the Johnny Fisher knockout in this fight, or stoppage. Let me not even say knockout, because he may not knock him out per se, but yeah, I predict a stoppage there. Right, so now talk about the main event. So Dan Jacobs against John Ryder. How do I see this fight going? Okay, so John Ryder's two biggest strengths may end up being his two biggest weaknesses in this fight. First strength is the fact that he's a come forward pressure fighting southpaw. Now we all know most boxers hate to fight southpaws because you have to do everything in reverse of what you usually teach yourself to do. The moves you make, the way you jab, where you keep your hand, where you keep that hand placement, it's all geared to a specific style, which is orthodox. When you have to sort of mirror your opponent, it's a lot harder to deal with. And the fact of that opponent being a pressure fighter and not like a counter puncher or like a pure boxer or even a boxer puncher probably makes that a little bit more tricky if you've got to constantly be worrying about where his shots are coming from. Now, the way that also becomes his weakness in this particular fight is because while Daniel Jacobs doesn't do it often anymore, he is a switch hitter, so he can fight quite comfortably from the southpaw stance himself back to the orthodox. Now, when you can switch it effectively, I want to say, like, the one major advantage it gives you is the fact that your opponent always now has to reset whatever game plan they had. If you switch tactics or however they were planning to sort of throw certain shots, everything has to be adjusted. And if you're not one of the like mentally quicker fighters in making those adjustments, it can end up being a very hard night. When sometimes you get yourself into a groove of doing one thing, the person switches. Okay, now you've got to reset and figure out the next plan of attack. Okay, you worked that out. Then they switch again. Okay, so now you have to kind of go back to what you were doing before, but their movement might be different now. So you have to try and work out and judge and time exactly how you're now going to implement the change you just taught yourself to do like several rounds before, and then potentially they switch again and again. Now obviously the people who switch poorly and end up with their feet squared to get not normally will end up sort of getting knocked down or getting caught with dumb shots that they shouldn't be getting caught with just because they're switching at the wrong moment. There's only a few people that can actually switch fluidly. Now Jacobs can. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't do it often, so it's not like he's not a Terence Crawford level switch hitter. But so I digress on that. So that's one point where Ryder could be a weakness. The other one is obviously the energy of the crowd. Now, John Ryder, from what I can remember, has not headlined a card except the one against Callum Smith. I may be very, very wrong on that. I'd have to go through his entire resume and have a look. But what I remember about that fight is, were the crowd on his side? I think the crowd started on Smith's side and ended up being on Ryder's side by the end of the fight. But getting that energy from the crowd potentially means that he might take risks that he doesn't normally need to take. And ultimately, everyone knows when you take certain risks, you leave yourself extremely vulnerable for counters, for heavy power shots, for shots that just land clean and land correctly. Now, we just have to look at Daniel Jacobs' records: 37-3, but with 30 knockouts. so we know he has knockout power. He had it at 54, he had it at 60, although he didn't knock out a huge amount of people at 60, but he put down a fair few amount, I'd say. Plus he was also boiling himself down when he was doing 60 towards the later years, so maybe some of that power waned off a little small amount, but he hits you, you know that you've been hit. Now Ryder is more of a volume guy, because he's, what is he, 30 and 5, but it's 17 KOs out of the 30 fights, so 13 man went distance, and then there's another 5 to beat him. When it comes to the actual skill sets, like, look, Jacobs is the better boxer. Like, that's not even debatable. Like, Jacobs is the boxer, Ryder is the brawler. Now, the way I see Jacobs being able to win this fight, two things. Number one, he can't play into the crowd too much, whether they're going to be for him or against him. He needs to sort of make it an innate ability where whatever cheers or boos just translate into an energy that just sort of maybe captures his body, so to speak, rather than actually listening to what they're fully saying. Because I can imagine not a lot of them are going to be, even though they love to see him over here, they're not going to be for him. I'll be rooting for him, but that's for a slightly different reason. Some of you who know me will know why. Others who don't, it's cool. Like, I'm just going for Jacobs. I do believe that he actually, if he gets Ryder clean at least one time, I think that sets the tone for the rest of the fight. Now, John Ryder is extremely durable, so I don't envision Daniel Jacobs getting a knockout. He has also been acting a bit happy to be here-ish over the week. Now, look, I know that this has been one of his things he wanted to tick off his bucket list, to come to the UK and fight in front of like a UK crowd, and I get that, because when it comes to boxing, it's between us and the Mexicans for like the best atmosphere, in my opinion, from what I've seen. But he can't be here just to tick off an accomplishment. Like John Ryder said, the loser of this fight is done. And in the press conference, Jacob said, well, no, I mean, like, that's not my mentality. Like, a loss doesn't define me. Which almost made me think to myself, is he accepting the possibility that he might lose this fight, and then it's just about bouncing back afterwards? Because that's not the mindset I need him to have if he's to win this fight the way I believe he can. Now, I've said all of that with probably no analysis in it apart from a couple bits of conjecture. But I remember quite vividly a lot of Jacob's most high profile fights, minus the last Gabriel fight. But I think he wins on points, and I believe it's going to be a unanimous decision. And I'm going to go about 8 rounds to 4. Like, I feel like that will be at least 1 scorecard, possibly 2, and you might get a 115, 113 type scorecard as well, I suppose. But that's my prediction. I predict that Daniel Jacobs does win, and he wins a UD on points, in a fairly good performance, but maybe not an amazing one. But I know the atmosphere is going to be killer. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it. So let's see how right or wrong I am with any of these picks now. Again, people, like and subscribe. Thanks for listening to this one. I don't know how long it's gone on for. Hopefully it hasn't bored anyone. But yeah, let's see. Leave your comments below. Leave your predictions below as well. Let's see who which ones of us is right, which ones of us is wrong, and just have a bit of a dialogue down there and have a good one. So for right now, basis picks locked.